Good Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Longtime ESPN Cleveland radio host Tony Rizzo with his thoughts on Kenny Pickett and the quarterback's fit with the Browns system.
I have to believe that Stefanski was consulted when Andrew brought in Kenny Pickett. Now, I don't think Stefanski made the call.
Consulted to what degree, though?
No, can this guy play in your offense? And Kevin said yes. I don't think Kevin would bring a guy here he didn't think could play in his offense. And Kevin spoke kind of glowingly about Kenny Pickett, which raised a few eyebrows out in Berea. So before everybody's just, Kenny Pickett stinks, we don't want him to start. Let's see what happens. I'm going to try and be optimistic. Now, I think Kenny Pickett might look good in our offense. I think it's a possibility. Okay? Can they make him look good, Chris?
Yes,
yeah,
Riz, yes, they can.
Yeah, it depends on what you ask him to do. He's somebody that takes care of the ball, doesn't put a lot of splash plays up, but he takes care of the ball and doesn't turn the ball over. They need that at the quarterback position. Robert Mays from the Athletic Football Show, the key for a successful offense for the Browns in 2025.
To me, it comes down to the offensive line and whether they can have a bounce back year. Then you look at what they've tried to do, especially last year. Even 2 years ago, it's a spread offense. It's a spread offense the entire time with Deshaun Watson, and they're trying to live in these two different worlds where they're trying to meld the Bill Callahan, Kevin Stefanski world with the Deshaun Watson world, and it never worked. And then last year, they move on from Bill, and they go Bill moves on from them, and they go even further into the Deshaun Watson world, where you have a run game that's a lot more mid-zone. And then if you look at the construction of the coaching staff, they actually brought over the assistant offensive line coach from the Eagles to be the assistant offensive line coach last year. And so you have a lot of this like mid-zone gun run game. And that's never what the Browns were at their best. Like Joe Bitonio said, it was all outside zone and power stuff. And so I think that there's a version of this team where the offensive line performs significantly better this year because you're putting them back in a scheme where they're comfortable, let alone how comfortable the play caller is with it. And so if that can be the engine of it, and then you can do the play action screen game stuff off of it, I do think the receivers are good enough to survive in an offense like that. But if you don't have the line in the run game, then none of the rest of this really matters.
No, that's absolutely true. If the line and the run game is back, the quarterback play has to be average. And if it is, you get what you got 2 years ago when they were a playoff team. All right. Mina Kimes talking about the Browns pass catchers.
It's a pretty shaky group of pass catchers. Judy, to his credit, in the second half of last season, actually ranked third league-wide in yards per game, despite not having a crazy dominant target share. You remember some of the games with Jameis where he just went crazy. But Tillman, Deontay, Johnson, I don't know. I really don't know who they, if they're in 12 personnel, who are they? I really don't know how the rest of the group shakes out.
Well, if they're in 12 personnel, it means it's going to be David Njoku and Harold Fannin, and then it's not as critical. But yeah, if Deontay Johnson's back, they've got a decent NFL receiver. We'll see. We'll see. All right, Guardians trying to snap that losing streak. It was Tanner Bybee against Shota Imanaga, and Guardians got things going second inning. Carlos Santana at the plate, and Santana down the left field line, and that one is over the ivy for a solo home run and a 1-0 lead. Very next pitch, Lane Thomas, almost the very same place. Another solo home run. Guardians with an early 2-0 lead. In the third, David Fry to left field. How about the third home run for the Guardians? All solos, though, 3-0. Bottom of the third, Seika Suzuki hits one into the gap. It's going to go as a double. A run will score to make it 3-1. Still in the third. Pete Crow Armstrong. And that one goes to the shortstop, but a run will score to make it 3-2. Fourth inning, Cubs at it again. Suzuki brings in two with an RBI single, 4-3. The Cubs with the lead. Pete Crow Armstrong, this one is big trouble. Out into the corner in right field, misplayed. It goes as an RBI, triple 5-3. Guardians score 1 in the 9th, but the losing streak continues. Cubs win it by a score of 5-4. Guardians pitcher Luis Ortiz was scheduled to get the start today. That's not going to happen. He's been placed on the non-disciplinary paid leave through the All-Star break by Major League Baseball because of an MLB betting investigation that is going on. Again, Ortiz was supposed to take his turn in the rotation tonight. Joey Cantillo has been called up from Columbus, and he will get the start against Cade Horton for the Cubs. That is the game tonight. All right, LeBron James recently opted into his final year of a contract with the Los Angeles Lakers, one that will pay him $52 million plus this year. Take a look at this, though. He was in the area in Portage County at a golf outing yesterday. That golf hat says, "Welcome home." It's led to some wild speculation. Again, LeBron James in the area wearing a golf cap that says "Welcome home." That from LeBron James' Instagram account. Brian Windhorst, ESPN's national NBA analyst, initially shot down any thought that LeBron could be traded from the Los Angeles Lakers, as he's now on a final year of his contract. Instead, he thinks there's a small chance LeBron could be traded.
I'm not 100% sure. And that is because my conversations over the last 3 days have crystallized that the Lakers are essentially viewing LeBron as an expiring contract. And that may sound like a toss-off statement, but that's not insignificant. LeBron has never been an expiring contract, quite literally. Never in his 23-year career, over the 9 contracts he's signed, over all the different teams he's been on, he's never been on the last year of his contract. He's never been 40 years old. He's never not been the franchise player on his team. The Lakers and LeBron, whoever wants to spin their side of the story, I'm not sure what happened, but the Lakers and LeBron did not have substantive discussions about extending his contract, which every team LeBron's been on for 20-something years has wanted to have substantive conversations about extending his contract. And what happens to expiring contracts in the NBA? They're viewed as trade pieces. So, for all those reasons, the money, the fact that LeBron and Luka are still a very formidable duo, the fact that the Lakers are not done with their offseason, the fact that trading him is crazy, the fact that this is being built around Luka and they've got to maintain their cap sheet, and all of those things, everything that makes sense. But I'm just unlocking the door because I'm not as convinced as before of its impossibility.
So again, we'll continue to monitor that, see if the Cavs have an interest in bringing LeBron back for Part 3. We'll continue to monitor that in the days and weeks ahead. Time for us to take a quick time out other side of the break. Lance Reisland is up first. We're talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I'm a 70-year-old Browns fan, been a fan all my life. Watched Jim Brown and the '64 championship game. Worked hard with Browns backers to save the Browns in the 90s. Saying that, myself and all my family and friends will never go to the airport to watch the Browns. If Haslam cared about the fans, he would have built a retractable dome in Cleveland and helped the local businesses that invest in Cleveland. Airplane noise and stink and that Cybertruck airplane hangar dome will go the way of Richfield Coliseum. There is no better sports experience in the world than going into Cleveland on a beautiful fall day for a Browns game. Go Cleveland Browns, not Brook Park Browns. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, not everybody's going to be happy. I get it, but I keep coming back to you can't tell a guy where to spend $1 billion of his money to develop what. So there's reasons for it. I understand the people that are disappointed. To me, it's not the Browns games that are important. It is the other events. If they are successful bringing the other type of events that they're talking about, Final Fours and those kind of things, and the 70,000 people at a concert and the football championships, then the Dome makes a lot of sense.
Well, for me, first of all, it starts off with, my dad was always an open air guy, and he didn't like domes. But I will say this: back when, somebody mentioned to me the other day, well, these guys are gladiators. Well, they're really not anymore. These are skilled athletes, and whether you like it or not, if you're gonna, for example, no names are necessary, but if you're gonna pay somebody $230 million, you want that guy to play at his peak, right? You want optimal conditions, and people don't like that, and I get that. And it's great to play outside. But Brook Park's really, really close, right? And you're going to still do those things in Cleveland and go to the game. If you look at New York, and there's other places that, the stadium's not directly in town, but it's close enough where it doesn't even make a big difference, right? If you go to dinner downtown, then you go to the game, you're talking a 15-minute drive. So I think the parking, for me, it's parking, right? The older I get, I want the conveniences. So is there good parking? Is there good sight lines? Can you watch the game? But I'm done sitting in the cold. As I've gotten older, I did that for my entire career as a football coach. So I'm looking forward to having the Dome. I'm looking forward to all the events that come with it, the excitement of having a new Dome. I think when that thing is built and people see the vision and see what it's going to be, I think they're going to be very excited. I understand the people that like the outside play. I do as well. But the times have changed, and it's time to kind of keep up so you can get those events, like you're saying, not just the 8 home games, but the events throughout the year.
Yeah, and again, I understand why people want it downtown, and I understand that line of thinking. I kind of view it more regionally, I guess, is where the way I'm coming from it. All right, Shadeur Sanders getting ready to come back to training camp and perform. He posted this social media, working out, high school in Miami, Florida. Still in shorts, though. We still don't have pads on. But Lance, again, he's trying to stay connected with his fans, which I respect that, and getting ready. It's going to be important for him to maximize every opportunity he gets once they get the pads on. You were at all of the available OTAs and training camps, mini camps that were open to the media. What kind of progress did you see Shadeur make?
Well, I'll say this. I've never seen a player in my time covering the Browns now for 3 or 4 years, a guy who gets more praise and more criticism, right? He gets both. Some of it's warranted, right? This posting videos like this and stuff, that's kind of his image. And that's what young kids are, right? I'm an older generation. This stuff doesn't bother me because who he is and how old he is and the lifestyle that he grew up in and things of that nature. Now, during football-wise, I thought he improved a ton. I think he does a lot of things really, really well. The thing that he had to work on is his footwork, and a lot of his footwork issues came from the lack of protection and lack of run game during his time at Colorado. So he got in bad habits of drifting back and bad habits of not transferring his weight, things that he'll definitely work on here with the Browns. I think everybody's got to take kind of a step back and let this young man kind of develop and grow. So when he does play, he's ready to go, right? That means learn the playbook, get some reps in camp, get some reps during the preseason games. Throwing a quarterback in there, and a quarterback that I always, once again, I'll age myself here, but Tim Couch is an example. If you throw a guy in there that doesn't have the pieces around him, they can get into worse habits and kind of get beaten down. So I think he's done a great job. He's a super nice kid. Those guys, the people I work with that interview him and stuff, he's a great guy. He's just got to, he's got to kind of put himself under the radar and work every day, which he seems to be doing. All 4 of those guys are really good guys. They work really hard, and they're good teammates. So it'll be a good, fair competition, and I think the Browns staff got them all ready to compete. It's just a few weeks away. I can't wait.
So Greg Rosenthal, this is from the NFL Daily Show, talking about what he thinks the Browns' secret weapon might be in 2025.
I'm going to say their secret weapon, their low expectations this year. quietly, since Kevin Stefanski's gotten there, we've always thought they were going to be good. I went back and looked at their over-under win total over the last 5 years. It's never been below 8.5. This is the Cleveland Browns. And you know what? They beat expectations a few times. They had those years where he won Coach of the Year. They won 11 games. But, like, weirdly, that season where Joe Flacco played, like, going into the year, they were 9.5 win over-under. Like, we've thought they were going to be good each and every year. And for the most part, they've been average to very good until last year. And this year, they are tied for last place in terms of expected win total, 5.5. So the expectations are very low. I actually really do think that can be a secret weapon for teams. Maybe the Browns take advantage of it despite the quarterbacks.
So, Lance, it's not a secret. The reason is you don't have a quarterback. You have 4 of them. So you don't have the quarterback, and there's a general consensus that their roster's getting a little older. That one I don't know that I agree with. I think you and I think they're a little bit better than most people are giving them credit for.
Well, I'll say this. First of all, lack of expectations is something I never wanted as a coach. When I lost, I wanted people to be mad at me. I wanted people to be mad and want me removed. Because without expectations, you're allowing complacency, in my opinion. So to go to his call is at a strength. I do not believe in that at all. We're allowed, on the outside, we're allowed to say that. But I will say this as a coach: their expectations should be very, very high. I tend to go on the coaching view here, but if I have an offensive line that I think can be pretty good, going back to what they do with Mike Bloomgren, and I have a defensive line that's 5 to 8 to 10 deep, I think I got a chance to win some games because I'll be able to run the ball, shorten the clock, play good defense. So as a coach, your expectations better be high, or you won't be coaching the team next year, right? So I hope I don't think it's kind of going back to. We need to develop these quarterbacks. And I don't believe in that. You play the best guys. You got to win games. It comes down to winning games. I agree. You and I think they're going to be better. I think the roster's better than people give them credit for. But the lack of expectations is something I never wanted as a coach. I want expectations. There's 2 types of good. There's good when people don't think you're very good, and then there's good when people know you're good. Browns have to believe they're good, know they're good, and go out and win some games and not listen to, it'll be okay. It's not okay. You got to go win football games. I don't care what level you're at. So I'm a little bit different than most on that. But for me, you got to win games, and expectations are a great thing. I used to like when people were mad at me after we lost because that means they care.
Robert Mays from the Athletic Football Show on what he thinks went wrong with Browns defense in 2024.
They led the league in pressure rate, according to Next Gen Stats. And when you watch this team play, they were not affecting the pocket more than any other pass rush in the NFL. And so I think that is the number one starting point. When you look at what this team was in 2023 and that wave of guys coming at you, that just wasn't the case last year. Even when Zadarius Smith was there, he was not the same player. And so them not being able to take over games up front, and I think you're starting to feel that, I think that's a big part of it. But I think this is another really good case of how volatile coverage is and how not sticky it is from season to season. You're going to have those years like they had in 2023 where those guys pitched a shutout for like 17 games. They were so good in man coverage. And I think the number that really kind of points to this, in 2023, when they were the best defense in the league, they had a 61% defensive success rate without pressure. That's crazy. Like league average is 50. And so the pressure and the front was good, but the coverage was phenomenal even when they weren't getting pressure. Last year, that number was 51%. So they dropped 10 percentage points, and 51% is essentially league average, and that's about what you would expect. So I think when you combine the lack of teeth up front and them not being able to dictate games that way, and the coverage unit going back to human levels of pass coverage, combining those 2 things, plus the worst conversion success rate on offensive downs in the NFL and what that does to a defense.
Yeah, Lance, I think he hit on all the points. Here's the question that I have. They clearly thought it was an issue because you drafted a defensive tackle. You drafted a guy that's going to play in the middle. Mike Hall, who was their top draft pick, even in second rounder, plays defensive tackle. How much better can this defense be with those 3 guys? And they all bring a little bit of a physicality to it.
Well, I think the defensive line is going to be really, really deep. Now, going to what he said on there, and it was interesting because, once again, the numbers are great, and we all use numbers, but I try to always stick to the film. And when you go in, so if you think about the Browns 2 years ago when they were elite and everybody, so 61% of the time the pressure wasn't there and those guys stuck anyway. Well, I guarantee you, during those when you prepare for the Browns a couple years ago, it's the perception of pressure too, right? So not only do they pressure, but when they don't pressure, you have to assume they're going to pressure. So everything you've done that week in terms of getting rid of the ball quickly, you still do that whether they create pressure or not. So you're still trying to get rid of the ball at 2.8, 3.2, all those times we use as offensive coordinators because you assume the pressure's coming, whether it's there or not. So that ability to pressure up front really helps the defensive backs. But also the perception of pressure really helps those defensive backs, right? And that's what they didn't do last year. And for me, it was the defense struggled a little bit more because of the offense. They did not play complementary football. I think if they can shorten the game, win on first down, both sides of the ball. That's what I'm always going to say. Protect the ball on offense, turn it over a little bit more on defense. That's why I wanted Xavier Watts when you and I were working the draft, right? They got to get the ball, create short fields for that offense. But the secondary, though, in this defense, they all work together. So for me, I love numbers. I think numbers are great, but numbers can be skewed in football. Sometimes there's feel, and sometimes you're down on the field. And I remember when you go into a game and a team doesn't create that pressure, but you've watched 3 films where all they did was pressure, that's what you worked on. So that year, not only the pressure, but the perception of pressure. So I think they're going to be very good. They're going to come at you in waves, but the offense has to do its part as well. So does the special teams. They got to end every drive in a kick. You're going to hear me saying this for the next 4 or 5 months, but there's a formula to win, and the Browns have it. They got to not listen to the noise, play good defense, run the ball, and they got a chance to win some games.
Lance Reisland and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about the offense and 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. This is Mike Renner from CBS Sports pushing the pile, talking about the Browns pass catchers.
You have the Browns, who have Deontay Johnson as your number 2, who was, when he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a number 1 type of wide receiver. You have Harold Fannin, who led college football, not just tight ends. He led all of college football in receiving yards last year to be your tight end too, which would be like a receiving tight end position in that offense.
So Lance, before we get into the film breakdown and the video analysis, 12 personnel, Deontay Johnson, if he comes back to what he could be, what he was in Pittsburgh, that's a huge help. Talk a little bit about what you've seen with Fannin, though, and I know we'll get into him when we're talking about 12 personnel.
Well, Fannon's a guy, obviously when he's talking about led the country, right? He had 117 receptions for 1,500 yards. Best 2 games were against Texas A&M and Penn State, so he played really good in the MAC against the big schools, the Power 4 schools. What Harold Fannin does really good, he's a unicorn in terms of how do you cover him, right? So do you cover him with the linebacker or safety? He's too big and too fast for those guys. He's too big for a corner. There's sometimes during camp, even without the pads on, that he just uses his body very well. He's got great spatial awareness. He's got a really big catch radius, but he's kind of unique in what he can do, right? He can find matchups, and what the Browns, the fans should be very excited about 12 personnel, and I'd be shocked if the Browns aren't in 12 personnel as their number 1 personnel group this year because of what Harold Fannin can do. He's a mismatch in the red zone. He can do a ton of different things. If he can block a little bit, which I think he can, he'll help the Browns and Kevin Stefanski dictate what they got, what defense is in the game. But I love Harold Fannin. He's a matchup nightmare because he runs well enough to beat corners. He's fast. He's just one of those guys just figures out a way to get open. He understands leverage and angles and blind spots, and he's really fun. His attention to detail, works hard in practice, doesn't say much. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a really good addition. What you saw on film doesn't lie with Harold Fannin. He's going to be really good in this offense.
All right, so let's dive into 12 personnel. So a couple of points. First one, 12 personnel dictates what the defense does. So take us through that and what we see in these clips.
So you're going to get a first down here in 10, right? So you got that with 2 tight ends, it forces a 6 down lineman within the circle. That 6 down lineman on 1st and 10 only leaves 2 linebackers, right? With 2 linebackers, now you get 3 defense on a corner, a safety, and a corner. Now, play action, there's all kinds of windows, right? So that guy's going to take the safety in the corner. That leaves that big window there behind the linebackers because they stepped up. Now the linebacker's going to step up on the under. Jared Goff's going to make an easy throw to a wide open over. And what you get with this is kind of the simulation, right? You're going to get constant pressure. So now it's just in real time, right? You'll see it coming open. What I like about what 12 personnel does is 12 personnel is going to dictate what the defense does. This is first down, right? So again, 6 defenders in the box. Makes it really easy to throw the ball. They got to stop the run. Now these linebackers are going to step up on the run. That's going to create a bigger window. Like I said, now you only have 3 defenders. Corners are turned inside. It tells Goff zone. Now that receiver is going to take the corner and the safety. The linebacker steps up. That's who Goff is reading. He steps up on the under route. He's going to deliver an over route to St. Brown. This is really typical 12 personnel type of stuff where on first down, you dictate what you got, and you're able to win first down because the defense has to stop the run if you're a strong running team like the Browns have been in the past, like Detroit was. This is a classic look, and I'm going to post something later this summer about all the different stuff. This is just one of many, many, many different ways that you can attack with 12 personnel. You can see with this personnel group, before you throw the ball, Jared Goff got the look he wanted. He got a cover 3 look with the linebacker stepping up, max protection off play action. This is really easy stuff for an NFL quarterback. Easy, high, low. This is what you're going to get a ton of, I think, with Fannin, Njoku, Judy, and I think Tillman, Deontay Johnson, the strong run game with Judkins and Sampson, and then going back to what they do with pin and pull, power, counter. Browns offense, me, I know I'm always a positive guy, but I think there's some room. This 12 personnel can really get these guys going, and it could be a really strong personnel group for the Browns.
All right, so not only does it dictate what the defense does, the second point, it can be tough to cover in the red zone. So once you get inside the opponent's 20-yard line, take us through that and what you mean with that.
Well, you see everybody's going to be bunched up here. So they're same look now. They're a little bit tighter. This guy's going to go in motion. When that guy goes in motion, it bumps everybody in coverage. That guy circled right there, he's going to be in charge of motion. But he thinks run. So he comes screaming in B-gap, does not cover his guy. So again, the motion being in 2 tight end sets, it shows run. There's the play action. He steps up. He's got to cover 3 strong, who's the tight end in the flat. So again, if you can see the line of scrimmage, you see all 11 defenders in the box because of the run look and the tight receivers and the big tight ends. And what it does with motion, it forces those secondary guys to bump. And what happens when you bump? You're in the red zone. People are looking to stop the run. That guy's just coming with his hair on fire because he thinks it's a run play. So 2 tight end set, showing run. This is just an easy pitch and catch on an arrow route because the guy that's supposed to cover the motion ends up coming on a blitz. So again, 12 personnel dictated this, got everybody in tight, created an outside easy leverage for the tight end. Goff sees that pressure coming. He knows that guy's in charge because he man coverage. Really, really simple stuff for NFL quarterbacks. Easy stuff to break down. Hard to stop for a defense because of the personnel group. It's a power run group. If you can get some athletic tight ends like Fannin and Njoku, it creates nightmares in matchups. Red zone being one of those matchup areas that's really, really hard for that defense.
So typically when we talk about the 12 personnel, the other thing is you mentioned it, matchup problems. What does it do if you've got Njoku, Fannin, and somebody like Dylan Sampson, who is pretty much an elite pass catcher out of the backfield?
Well, so every time you watch a game, right, so say they say 12, 12, 12. The defensive corner of the other team is going to say 12 as well. So if he sees 12, he's going to either say regular, nickel, or dime, or however they term it, but they're either going to say regular, stop the run, dime and nickel to stop the pass. Well, and that's when Kevin Stefanski's at his best. Let's say they go regular because the Browns are running the ball really, really well. Regular usually means 3 linebackers. You get in that tight formation, all those linebackers are in the box. Well, with the ability of Fannin, Njoku, and Sampson, you can go empty, right? So now what you've done is you've created matchups for either your receivers or your tight ends on bigger guys who thought they were going to have to stop the run when they came in the game. It just creates matchups against safeties. Do you put corners on the tight ends because those are go-to guys, and who covers Judy? Can you get those inside guy? Can you get Sampson lined up on a Mike Backer? That's what Kevin Stefanski does at an elite level. He wants to power run game early, then dictate with 12 and 13 personnel what you put in the game, and then go opposite according, right? So with Sampson being a elite receiver, that'll probably be the primary empty personnel group you'll see from the Browns. 12 personnel with with the 2 tight ends in the back split out because they have receiver ability. An absolute nightmare for a defense starts with, again, though, running that ball strong, making that defensive coordinator make a decision. Does he stop the run or does he stop the pass? If you got 2 athletic tight ends and a good receiving back, it could be really good for the Browns.
Lance Reisland and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout, other side of the break, film breakdown, video analysis, position battles to watch early in camp. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day, put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So, Lance, some position battles to watch early in camp. We're going to begin with an obvious one, the quarterbacks. Take us through some of this.
Well, I'll kind of go through what every quarterback's got to do. So you're going to see quarterbacks, they did a really nice job. Pickett's got to make sure that he moves his feet within the pocket. He throws really good ball. He's athletic. We'll see what he can do. Sanders has got to make sure he doesn't drift. He's got to make sure that he throws on time and drives the football, transfers his weight. Dylan Gabriel's got to continue to make sure that he creates those throwing lanes being undersized. He did a really nice job of that. And then Flacco's got to continue to, I think, set the tone as the leader in the clubhouse, so to say, because of the fact he's been around so long, he's been in this defense. So what you get out of all these throws is all these guys have strengths, all these guys have some weaknesses. The definite order right now for me, though, is Flacco, then the other 3. I think you're going to see some guys step up, some guys fall down. We'll see what happens. I say they keep 3, maybe a practice squad guy, but I'll tell you what, those young guys are going to get a look. And you can see where, I say this to everybody, Dylan Gabriel was drafted in the 3rd round. That means that's the guy they wanted. They passed on a safety that they needed in that defense. So they really have high hopes for Dylan Gabriel. I was very high on Dylan Gabriel. I was also high on Sanders. I think Flacco's a guy who can compete. Pickett's a guy that they love because of his movement skills. There's going to be, now, if they can split the reps up, but to make these guys game ready, they're going to have to go a lot more live in practice. And that's the first, when they put the pads on, that's what you and I will be talking about when we're together. What do they do in practice? Are they hitting a lot more? Last couple years, their roster's been set. It's not set. Quarterback is the #1 position in NFL football. It'll be interesting moving forward with these 4 guys.
Yeah, without question, and the intensity should be ratcheted up a little bit, and I think we've talked about that quite a bit. That's a good thing. Defensive line depth is the second one. Take us through what you're paying attention to there with that battle.
Well, I'm seeing what they're going to do with all these guys, right? So you got Malik Collins, my favorite offseason pick. Great movement skills, ability to change direction. He'll be a pass rushing guy inside. Will he match up with Shelby Harris? Will he match up with Mike Hall? Will he match up with Graham? So now they got 4 guys in there. Shelby Harris does a nice job too, but the other 3 guys are guys that can run, right? Guys who are elite athletically, bend, right? And then I want to see, does Alex Wright or Isaiah McGuire become the second, not the rotational guy, but who's that second consistent end, 3-down defensive end? I'm interested to see Mason Graham. I've had a lot of people ask me, I'm biased, he's #1 on my board, but I'm excited to break down film and show everybody film when Mason Graham puts those pads on, because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But what I've seen on film from his time at Michigan against really good teams is he's a dominant force. So are they going to be 7, 8, 9, 10 deep? Will these guys be position flexible? Will they play guard? Will they play inside a defensive tackle and at defensive end? Can they make life easier for the linebackers that are going to be new? Can they create pressure so they can create some interceptions on the back end with that really good secondary? I say the Browns defense gets back to where they were 2 years ago. I think they can even be better. The loss of JOK hurts, but I think the defensive line is substantially better because they got guys that match Jim Schwartz and what he wants to do. This is an elite group, top 3, top 5 group in the NFL. I say that without hesitation. Now they got to go out and do it.
All right, the next battle that we're talking about, the third wide receiver, and they need a couple of wide receivers to step up. But take us through the thing you're paying attention to relative to the third wide receiver.
Well, that's what we talked about earlier. What's the group, right? So a guy I really like, obviously, is Fannin. Does Fannin become that third receiver, second receiver because they're in 12? They got some other guys, right? Deontay Johnson. Now, Deontay Johnson's not about football, right? He's an elite guy. Can he become a guy? Caden Davis, Luke Floria, guys who just do everything right. Really good slot receivers. I'm super, super high on Floria. Not because he's a local kid, because of what he gives you in the slot with sudden and twitchiness, right? Then you got guys like Woods. Is he going to get there? Jamari Thrash, right? There's guys they have, David Bell. There's guys they have that have to step up. But if you ask me what they're going to do, I want to see what personnel group and do they consider Sed Tillman their number 2? Do they consider Fannin a receiver? If they do, then I think those are the top 3 guys, with Deontay Johnson being obviously with Jerry Jeudy, but Deontay Johnson right now is a guy you can't count on until he can be consistently do the right things and make sure he's available, right? Because the best ability is availability. He's got to make sure that he does the right thing so he's always available. I will say Jamari Thrash did some really good things. So they got some guys that can make some plays. Can they do it on Sunday afternoon will be the key. But I'm interested to see where Fannin's at in this mix, and is he a guy they're really counting on?
All right, and the fourth and final position battle in training camp early that paying attention to is the linebacker rotation. Take us through that.
Well, I'm interested to see because JOK left. Now, Diabate is a guy, the more you watch him in practice, he's a get-off-the-bus guy first. What a long, athletic kid, right? Knocking some balls down here, great movement skills. Bush is the guy right here covering verticals, another downhill guy, really good for this scheme. Linebackers practice with tremendous intensity, right? Baker's a guy that really big pickup for them with loss of JOK. The thing that I want to see with the linebackers is, do they make are things easier now that JOK is not there? And then obviously the wild card here is Schlesinger, right? Guy who led Division I big school football last year with 90 solo tackles. Now, a couple things about this kid. First and foremost, I thought he was thin. He's got absolute tree trunks for legs. He's much more mature than a rookie. And what I mean by that is how he handles himself in practice, how he talks to the press, how he talks to you guys, how he does the things that he does very well. But he's got tree trunk legs, and he is a tackling machine. So there's a chance that Schwester's going to be one of those rookies who's elite. So these guys have to do it as a unit. JOK, in my opinion, was becoming one of the best linebackers, top 3-5 linebackers in the NFL. They've got a really good room here. This room can get better if that defensive line is what I think it's going to be. So the linebackers, and then the secondary, which would be my other group that I didn't bring up, would be who's going to be that free safety. Hickman, Jenkins, Kazee. But these linebackers should get helped out. Not only are they good, but by that defensive line. Another group that I'll be watching right there is where I'm at in practice. Right behind those guys, I look forward to watching them each and every day.
So, Lance, before I let you go, we've kind of talked about it. They add Graham, they add Collins, Mike Hull Jr. Have they had those kind of athletes at the defensive tackle position? I know Dalvin Tomlinson was good, but he's more of a space eater. The guys that they brought in, they're a little twitchy, more twitchy than most defensive tackles are.
Well, Malik Collins is the guy, right? So he's got little ankles. He's got little linebacker ankles, right? He's 320 pounds, and he looks like he moves like a linebacker. Graham's a guy with great movement skills. Shelby Harris is probably the slowest guy. He's the run stopper. But then you got Mike Hall, another elite twitchy guy. And then you got those defensive ends. And I think what it shows you is that, first of all, Dalvin Thompson and Obo were very good players. They were very good teammates. I enjoyed watching them practice. Great body language, great energy, always at practice. Great guys. But they weren't guys that really fit the Schwartz defense with position flexibility, long arms, between that 270 and 320 range, can play multiple positions inside and out. can rush the passer. You're going to see a lot of, I used to call it pass rushing to stop the run, where they're just going to get upfield and cause absolute havoc because of their ability to move, right? And their ability to move in a small space. And not only do guys like Malik Collins and Graham have great movement skills, they're 300-plus pounds. So they're not little guys moving around. These are big human beings. So there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of competition. They're going to, Mike Hall's going to have to get in there and learn to make sure that he can take on a double team. That was his weakness coming out of Ohio State. Struggled with that last year when he got in the game. But he didn't struggle with pass rushing because he's an elite athlete. So, yeah, this defensive line, even though Dalvin Thompson was a huge loss in terms of stopping the run, this is a definite improvement. This is the best defensive line, in my opinion, they've had in a Jim Schwartz scheme. Even 2 years ago, defensive line-wise, they're very, very good and deep.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Always really good film breakdown, video analysis on cleveland.com, as well as The Plain Dealer. We're going to take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. Sports4CLE will be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. The Plain Dealer and Cleveland.com's Browns beat reporter Mary Kay Cabot, frequent guest on the show, talking about Deshaun Watson and the team.
The Browns were not overjoyed that he wasn't around during the tough times of the 3-14 season after he ruptured the Achilles after he ruptured the Achilles the first time. They were not overjoyed that he wasn't around very much. Even though he had rehabbed the shoulder in Los Angeles, there was sort of a feeling like, hey, it would be nice to have you around here. Well, that's all changed now. He has been here every day since he had the second surgery, and he has been present in the building, and the coaches have raved about what he's done inside the building in terms of helping other guys and things like that. So he's not as much of a villain, I don't think, amongst his teammates as he is amongst the fan base.
With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, Barking Browns podcast, and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Casey, there's some stories that he's been mentoring quarterbacks, and I think we've had a couple of fans kind of vocalize they hope he's not back on the field. He's got a long way to get back on the field. But quite frankly, if he's in the facility, he's part of the team, and they probably want him to interact with some of the young guys.
Yeah, that was a very fair assessment by Mary Kay. As fans, it's hard to see. You don't hear teammates talk ill of him. People that have been in the meeting rooms with him, they're in the locker room with him. They're not the ones coming out, but the fans feel they're jaded by the experience. It is what it is. It was the worst contract in pro sports, and you're living it out, and because you're still attached to him, even though he is not going to be on the field in 2025. We're talking about a player who tore his Achilles in week 7, retore it after the season. He's going to be on whatever injury designation they end up placing him on. But if he is in the building, he is going to interact with players, and we have young quarterbacks that need mentor, that need people to kind of take under their wing, and if that's the role he's assuming, that's better than not doing it. For a player, he's had immense experience. If he can give anyone any wisdom along their way, it's invaluable to have guys that can do that. Now you have a Joe Flacco who can do that. And Kenny Pickett has had a much smaller sample size of a pro career, but to a degree, he's going to be able to do the same thing. So if you're in the building, help out in any way you can. I don't see anything wrong with that.
All right, let's turn our attention to the offensive line. What do you think they're going to get from the offensive line? Now, 4 of those guys are approaching the back half towards the end of their career. They're 30 years old, and offensive linemen never age gracefully. What can we expect from this offensive line?
Now, for me, that's a much more intriguing question than the quarterbacks. With the quarterbacks, there's so many unknown factors that's hard to answer, but you know the particulars of the offensive line. You know the names, you know who it's going to be, at least for the starting lineup. And a lot of my hopes of what this team can be are actually pinned on the fact that they're going to revert back to their old scheme, to the wide zone. And you heard how the offensive lineman, Joel and Conklin, they talked about it, after their exit interviews of how they felt that best fit what they wanted to be. So you're leaning into their skill sets, which is a good thing, but this is an older unit now, and it's possible that what we saw last year was partly scheme, but partly they might have aged out of their prime. Certainly someone like Joel Bitonio, who it feels like this is his last season. It feels like he could have hung it up after last season and career done, Ring of Honor, the whole thing. For him coming back, obviously White, Teller, Conklin, Pochich, these are all veterans. And now we're not talking about DeJuan Jones yet in this, the youngest player that's going to be part of this group, but he has a lot of questions too. So there's just a lot of questions surrounding their age. Can they stay healthy? But on paper, this is a very good unit, but the games aren't played on paper. So can they hold up over 17 games? I believe if they're more suited to handle the attrition this year when Zinter second year, Javion Cohen second year, Whippler going into year 3. Their interior is more bolstered. You signed Tevin Jenkins. I think that could be an integral part, someone who could really boost the depth of this line. But at the end of the day, we're not going to know till we get about halfway through the season if this is something they can hold up through. If so, I like Bloomgren. I love the hire. I love the marriage of the scheme and the personnel. It just comes down to health for me.
Yeah, and when Jack Conklin came back, he played pretty well, and he thought he was playing probably as well as he has in his career. So that's a good sign, without question.
Yeah, Conklin exceeded my expectations. I didn't know what to expect when he did return or if he was going to return. This is a man who's battled several major injuries to get to where he was last year. Played well when he came back into the fold. You could point to little stints where they all played well. They just didn't do it all together at the same time collectively, which that's what you're praying for here. You're going to revert back to a scheme they're more comfortable with. You got Bloomgren in the house, someone who's a little more of an authoritarian, who's going to push them and keep them striving for their best. So if they can stay healthy, this could be an above average unit in the NFL.
So I know you've discussed this on the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Best and worst case scenario for the 2025 Browns.
Best case scenario. Can we expect 17 games out of Joe Flacco? Is that something we can actually expect? That's best case scenario for me. A professional who's done it at a high level, and we've seen it work in this scheme. But I don't think any of us collectively are holding our breaths that Joe's going to give you a full season. Now, part of that's the age, and when we did see him play, it was a short window. Now, you were an explosive team who was able to capitalize on his experience. But if we're talking best case scenario, we're talking a solid running game. Joe Flacco, if he is the starter, throwing it no more than 30 times a game, and a very, very stingy defense. If that happens, you're looking at a team with a path to the playoffs. But if the opposite happens and the offensive line does age out, plays poorly, the running backs don't get up to speed quick enough, and then you get that revolving door at quarterback, that's a pretty low basement. That's a low floor.
So here's the thing that I'm struggling with. Let's think this through. In order for the Browns to be successful, they need to run the ball, they need to take care of the ball, and they need to play good defense. Kenny Pickett, I know he doesn't give you the explosive plays that Joe Flacco does. He also doesn't turn the ball over. How do you balance that out? Because Flacco, without question, gives you a higher upside, but he'll put the ball in harm's way more often than Kenny Pickett will.
Yeah, that's why I think for Joe, the running game is paramount because it can limit his exposures. If you think back 23, he's throwing the ball 42 times a game. There's just no way to do that in the NFL without turning the ball over, or at minimum putting the ball in harm's way. Maybe they drop an interception, things like that. But Kenny Pickett is a safer route, but he has a lower ceiling as far as what this offense could be. But could that be music to Stefanski's ears? Someone who just doesn't turn the ball over and who's going to run it to keep it between the lines and just play for field position and not do your defense any disservice by turning the ball over? That could play a factor. If I had to put money on it here today, I would say Flacco is the starter early in the season. And I could see a world in which Kenny Pickett gets dealt before the season starts. But a lot can change between now and then.
Yeah, my thought initially relative to that is I think Kevin Stefanski and probably to a certain extent Andrew Berry are hoping that Kenny Pickett comes out and plays lights out in training camp so that he looks like the guy that gives them the best opportunity to win. Now, can he do that? I don't know.
Well, you just touched on it. I think no matter what happens, based on what happened last year, no matter what you do, you have to put the quarterback out there that the team believes gives them the best chance to win. Someone they can rally around, they can believe in what you guys are trying to accomplish. I think last year that message got a little hollow with the Deshaun Watson comments about giving him the best chance to win. I don't know the fans didn't buy it. It'd be hard pressed for me to believe the team actually bought it as well. So whoever you put out there has to give them that. So best case scenario is one of these young guys, whether it's Pickett, whether it's Shadeur, whether it's Gabriel, just takes the job. And it makes it not even a question. Because if it is a question, who's the best guy, and we're feeling that on the outside, and if they feel that internally in the locker room, that they don't know who gives them the best chance to win, that can make for a messy start to the season.
Yeah, and I think in that sense it defaults to Joe Flacco because Joe Flacco kind of probably has the most credibility right now with the players just because he's done it.
And he's also the guy that you have to give the least amount of reps to leading up. So you really get to find out from the younger guys what they got. And, then if you start to get closer to the season and you see them ramping Flacco up, I think you'll have a better indication.
Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about Martin, Emerson, and some more on the defense. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day, put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. Mima Kimes from ESPN and Robert Mays from the Athletics Football Show on Martin Emerson's regression last year in 2024.
It speaks to how volatile coverage is. Like it's just so hard to rely on that. And you have these years where it all clicks. And if you don't take advantage of those years, you're almost inevitably going to take a step backward. And that's just one of those things when it comes to defensive regression that we probably don't talk about enough because there's really no explanation for it. Like, I think we want these things to be prescriptive. Yes. Yeah. Where it's like, all right, well, why didn't this guy play as well in a year B compared to year A at corner? And there isn't really a causal element to it. Sometimes just he didn't play as well. And that's not a satisfactory answer to fans, but that just is how corner goes sometimes.
I also think that with corners, offenses are really good at studying their weaknesses and breaking them down. I think of Sauce
Maybe that's it. It's a great point.
Perfect example of that as a player where he was at a rookie. He just looked like the best corner in the NFL. And I think offenses figured out how to attack him. Obviously running at him was a big thing.
Casey, the other thing that we've heard Jim Schwartz relative to the coverage is pressure. Defensive line gets pressure, it helps those corners and the secondary out.
Yeah, it limits their exposure, the time they have to stay in phase. And in this league with these wide receivers that have been playing in 7-on-7 since they were 12 years old, like if you can turn it into that kind of affair, the offense will always have the advantage. But when it comes to Martin Emerson, you're not going to convince me he wasn't dealing with something physical last year. He had an unbelievable training camp. If you think of the joint practices against the Vikings, and he was going toe-to-toe with Justin Jefferson. I mean, it was and to the point where Jefferson had to address it after it was over. And then when the season started, and there was week 2, it was kind of a noticeable dip. I just think he was dealing with something now. He was never on the injury reports. He never made an excuse of it. He was going out there and battling. But if you just look at his play style, he is an in-phase mauler. He is someone who wants to make contact with you, stay sticky throughout the reps, stay in phase, and be relevant at the catch point. And you're not going to convince me he became a worse athlete at the age of 25. And part of it, Amina there's a point with her and Robert. Offenses will learn how to attack you over time. And there are things you can do to Emerson. And there's matchups you can exploit him with. Those little shifty guys, that's going to be harder for him. He is a bigger, more physical corner who leans into his length. But I think if played correctly, I think that he is still could be a premier talent at the position. He just has to be right physically, because what he does travels. Now, what I'd like to see the Browns do with that is I would like to see Denzel be a move piece, be someone who goes over the coverage with the speedier guys, with the shiftier guys, and leave the bigger physical wide receivers to Martin Emerson. I think if you do that, he'll have an extremely successful season and could possibly be like one of the premier bounce backs in the NFL.
So you've got Greg Newsome, who's in the final year of his contract, Martin Emerson, final year of his contract. Who do you think comes back? Do you think both of them? If you think it's just one, which one do you think comes back? Or neither of them?
Well, obviously that is definitely an option when you get to this point in the contracts. But without no one else stepping up, without seeing what Miles Harden or Mitchell truly is in this league, it's hard for me to say you move on from both of them. And if I had to pick one to stay with, I'm staying with Martin Emerson. I just believe in his skill set and what he could be in this league. And Greg Newsome's kind of been miscast since Emerson arrived. He's an outside corner. He's just not playing outside. He's playing inside. Now, that could give other teams think he's more valuable as a person who could kind of be agnostic and move around the secondary. But if I had to pick one of the two, I would say Martin Emerson is a long-term corner in Cleveland, and this is more than likely Greg Newsome's final season, and I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he was dealt halfway through if things started to go south.
So other than quarterback, what are some of the biggest questions that the Browns have to answer? And they might not be able to answer quarterback this year, to be frank about it, but what do they have to answer other than quarterback in your mind?
We talked about the offensive line earlier. That's a big sticking point for me, because if they can play elite football, that opens it up for the running backs. And then you see the symbiotic relationship between run and pass and Stefanski's scheme and how you can marry them and make them both look the same. That's a huge part, and that a lot of that onus falls on the offensive line. But this team also needs playmakers. This is a team, and had we not had the sample size from Jameis Winston, we wouldn't even know what Jerry Jeudy could be. Just the way things were going last year. Luckily, we got that, and we've seen what Jeudy can be. Now they need to add to that. And if this is truly going back into Stefanski's wide zone base here, you have two tight ends, I believe, that can do a ton of damage with David Njoku and Harold Fannin. How much of a game plan is Fannin going to be for the Browns? Are they going to move him around? Are they going to be creative with their play calls? Is it going to open up a whole new section of the playbook that we really haven't seen, because we haven't had a tight end too that had his receiving abilities? So there's a lot on the table there at the playmakers. They could lean into tight end heavier this year while they find out what they have in Tillman and Thrash and is Deontay Johnson, is he going to return to what he was in Pittsburgh? Yes, it feels like a long shot, but if that happens, all of a sudden you feel better about the unit. But they have to figure out who their playmakers are and lean on them heavily.
Yeah, I think they got to get an answer on if DeJuan Jones can be a starting tackle in this league, because that's a high draft pick. If he cannot, you got to use probably one of those first-round picks on somebody who can be a really good tackle. Who are you most anxious to see in pads training camp? We're only a couple weeks away from training camp now.
Yep. For me, it's the guys up the middle. For me, it is Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger. And anybody who was in my orbit knew how high I was on Schlesinger, even though I thought there was less than a -% chance the Browns would take him at 33. The fact that they did, obviously they knew more of the JOK situation kind of coming down the pike than we did, but Schlesinger is, and when you see someone who only burst on the college scene for 1 year, and then you find out they were a walk-on, you might start to think, well, that's just, maybe they're a try-hard. It's more than that. He is an elite-level athlete. Things started to finally click. They got him on the field. He is a tackle machine. He's not a block deconstructor. He still has to evade to make plays, but I am not going to be surprised at all if Schlesinger leads this team in tackles and it leads the league within the next 5 years. That's the kind of player that I believe he is, and I think Mason Graham is going to be special. Also a player, when the Browns had the number 2 overall pick, I didn't think Graham was going to be on their radar. I figured they were going to go skill or quarterback, but I acknowledged even then when I didn't think they would take him, this might be the player with the quickest path to being an all-pro. And I feel very highly that he's going to change the way pressure happens in the middle with him and Michael Hall. and it's going to change the outlook of opposing offenses just based on a defensive line that can get after like that. And that rookie's going to have a lot to do with it.
All right, before I let you go, let's talk a little bit about quarterback. Assuming one of these rookie quarterbacks starts to take off in training camp, what are we going to hear? What's a sign that that's starting to happen before they'll acknowledge it team-wide?
Well, we know how they went about training, how they went about their previous sessions, running 2 drills at the same time to get their reps up and speed their learning curve up. But the real learning had to happen after they left. Now, have they been in the books? Have they memorized this playbook? Do they know it forwards and backwards? When we get to actual training camp, are we going to start to hear phrases from coaches like ahead of the curve? When they interview players, are we going to start hearing about one of these rookies having a presence in the huddle and being commanding and taking charge? These are the things I'm looking for. And then most importantly, when it translates to the field, are they calm under chaos? Do they look like the game is moving at the appropriate speed, or do they look like they're still swimming out there and trying to play catch up? If those things come together and you hear they're ahead of the curve and they're taking charge of the huddle, then when you see them on the field and it looks easy to them and it looks calm, that's when you can start to get excited about one of these rookies. Yeah, and what you'll typically hear is the veterans will start talking about him, and they won't be asked about him. When they start adding in, he's really that's when a rookie is starting to win over the veterans, and that's kind of what they need to do. All right, before I let you go, at what point do you think Kevin Stefanski names a starting quarterback? Oh, September 7th, about noon. They play it close to the vest. I think it'll become obvious even if they don't announce it. I don't expect them to announce it early. There's no reason to do that. But as we discussed earlier, if we get into the joint practice session of training camp, we come out of that, and all of a sudden they start ramping Joe Flacco's reps up in practice, I think that'll be a clear indication that no one has taken the job. But if someone does, and maybe 2 players start to compete really, and it goes on, I could see this going until the 3rd preseason game.
Yeah, and they need to do it sooner than that, I believe, just so people in the huddle get used to there's a different feel to each quarterback that you want the offense who's going to be out there to get used to.
Yeah, and that's cadence. That's even your steps to hand the ball off. Everything's a little different, split second, little adjustments. But in the NFL, those little tiny details mean so much, so they do need to ramp that up. I feel like that'll happen behind the scenes before they acknowledge anything publicly, though. I think that'll come, like I said, around the 3rd preseason game. They might make an official announcement. If they do, that's probably not a good sign.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, also co-host the Barking Browns podcast and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. It's going to do it for today's edition of Sports for CLE. No show tomorrow because of the 4th of July holiday. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great holiday weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.